I was 31 when I bought my first house, an old but charming brick cottage tucked into a quiet street outside Portland. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. After years of saving, working double shifts as a nurse, and sacrificing any hint of a social life, holding that set of keys in my palm felt like a silent victory. My name is Clara Wright, and I grew up in a home where being just enough never was. My parents, Alan and Denise, raised me and my younger brother Lucas like chess pieces, strategically moved for appearance, not love. Lucas, of course, was the king. I was more like a pawn they forgot they were even using. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. Growing up, I was always reminded that I was the practical one, which in our family was code for boring, plain, and expected to carry weight no one else wanted. My mom would say it with a smile during dinners, always with a hand gesture to Lucas. Your brother's the star. Clara, she's the glue. But glue cracks under pressure, and by the time I graduated nursing school, I knew my worth wouldn't be found under their roof. After buying my house, I made the painful choice to limit contact. I still spoke to my mom occasionally, small talk, surface things, but I'd learned to guard myself. Lucas had recently gotten married in a wedding I wasn't even asked to be in. I was seated near the kitchen with the caterer's children and given a to-go bag at the end like some kind of extra. I didn't complain. I didn't cry. I just left quietly and returned to the home I had built, alone, but whole. That peace shattered 3 weeks before my parents' 35th anniversary. I came home after a night shift, exhausted and emotionally numb from watching a young mother code blue for over 40 minutes. I barely had time to kick off my sneakers when my phone buzzed with a message from Mom. We were thinking, your house would be the perfect spot for the anniversary party. We'll invite about 40 people. You won't need to do much, just hand us the keys so we can prep. We'll take care of everything. At first, I thought it was a joke. Who asks to take over someone's house without permission, especially for a party I hadn't even known was happening? I didn't respond that night. I went to bed trying not to spiral, trying to remember how far I'd come. But the next morning, another message came, then a call, then 2. Clara, don't be difficult, Mom said when I finally picked up. This is important to us. We're your parents. We gave you life. Can't you give us one evening in return? I gave you my entire childhood, I replied, too tired to soften the truth. You gave me invisibility in return. Mom scoffed, and I could almost hear her hand waving me off. You're being dramatic. We didn't think you'd care since you live alone anyway. That phrase hit deeper than it should have. Since you live alone. As if that made my space less mine. As if being unmarried and childless made my sanctuary up for grabs. I calmly but firmly said no. I'm not hosting a 40-person party in my house, and I'm definitely not giving you the keys. That's final. Silence. Then Mom muttered, Fine. I'll let your father know. I didn't think much of it. I assumed that was the end. I didn't realize it was just the beginning of a storm I hadn't seen coming. A week later, they showed up at my doorstep. Unannounced, dressed in their Sunday best. Dad had his sharp navy suit on, and Mom clutched a folder filled with plans, lists, and Pinterest printouts. My porch light wasn't even on when they rang the bell. We thought it would be easier to talk face to face, Dad said as I opened the door in my bathrobe, completely drained. Talk about what? I asked flatly. The party, of course, Mom chimed, brushing past me and into my living room without waiting to be invited. Dad followed. They looked around the space as if they already owned it, praising my hardwood floors and commenting on where the buffet table would look best. I stood there, frozen, until something in me snapped. I said no, I said, louder this time, voice cracking. This is my home. You don't get to barge in and plan an event without asking. You never respected my boundaries. This ends now. Dad's expression shifted. His jaw clenched. Don't be ungrateful, he spat. This house exists because we raised you right. You owe us. I owe you nothing, I said quietly, especially not the space I built by surviving you. He didn't like that. In one sudden movement, he grabbed a ceramic plate from my sideboard, the one Grandma had gifted me before she passed, and hurled it at the floor. It shattered like glass thunder. Shards ricocheted into the corner, one piece slicing the toe of my sock. I stared at the broken porcelain, my grandmother's signature still faintly visible in blue ink on one large shard. The silence afterward was suffocating. No one moved. Mom didn't even gasp. She looked at the mess with cold detachment, like it was an unfortunate inconvenience. "Alan," she said under her breath, "this isn't helping." I looked them both dead in the eyes, something I hadn't dared to do since I was a child. "Get out." They hesitated. "Get out." When the door finally slammed shut behind them, I fell to the floor, knees weak, hands trembling. The silence of my house wrapped around me again, but this time, it wasn't peaceful. It felt violated. And something in me knew this story wasn't over. Not yet. The following days passed in a fog. I didn't go to work. I called in using my first sick days in months. I couldn't sleep properly, and I kept replaying that moment again and again in my mind. The plate shattering, my father's face, twisted with entitlement, not regret, my mother's indifference, the quiet sound of ceramic crunching under their shoes as they walked out. It wasn't just a tantrum, it was a declaration of war over the one thing they could never stand me having: independence. My house didn't feel like home anymore. That living room, once my cozy safe space, now felt haunted by echoes of old control disguised as love. I spent the next few nights deep cleaning like it would wipe the memory from the floorboards. I boxed up every remaining photo of them, even the childhood ones, and shoved them into the attic. The frame with "Family is Forever" above the hallway mirror? Gone. But I wasn't the only one shaken. 3 days after the incident, Lucas called me, something he rarely did unless he needed a favor or to borrow money. "Hey," he started hesitant. "Mom said something happened at your place. Dad's been in a mood." I didn't respond. "She said you threw them out and smashed something?" I almost laughed. "Of course." "She left out the part where Dad smashed a plate because I wouldn't give them my house for a party." Silence. That's not how she told it." "Shocker." He sighed. "Look, I know they're intense, but it's just one night. Why not let them have it?" That's when I realized Lucas wasn't calling to check on me. He was calling to guilt me. Again. "Because, Lucas," I said carefully, holding back a scream, "I am not a doormat anymore. I'm not an extension of their property, and you'd be amazed how quickly love turns to rage when they don't get what they want." "Dad's just stressed," he muttered. "You know how he gets." "No," I snapped. "I know how you let him get away with it. There's a difference." He hung up. I wasn't surprised. The next blow came 2 days later when I got a call from the HOA president, Deborah, a woman who wore pearl earrings with her gardening gloves and smiled with all teeth but no kindness. "Clara, dear," she began, syrupy sweet, "I just received a rather concerning letter from your parents." I sat up straighter. "I'm sorry, my what?" "They sent a formal request claiming your property was to be used for a family event and that you were being emotionally unstable and unreasonably hostile about it. They suggested I speak to you about allowing guests, just a friendly nudge to reconsider before anyone gets the HOA involved in a noise complaint preemptively." My blood turned to ice. "I never gave permission," I said sharply, "and frankly, it's none of their business. My house, my name, my deed." She hesitated. Of course. I just wanted to ensure everyone was still on good terms." "Good terms?" I ended the call before I said something regrettable. By then, I knew this wasn't just about a party. This was about control, about punishing me for saying no. So I did something that terrified me, but also felt incredibly necessary. I booked a therapy session. I hadn't been to therapy in years. The last time was in college after a panic attack during exams that landed me in urgent care. But this time, I wasn't looking for a Band-Aid. I wanted to understand why I kept letting them re-enter my life like wrecking balls. My therapist, Dr. Winslow, was a soft-spoken woman in her 50s who didn't blink once during my entire retelling. "And how long?" she asked gently. "Have they expected you to sacrifice without gratitude?" I blinked. "My whole life?" She nodded. "Then it's no surprise they feel entitled to the home you built, because in their story, you never left. You were always the quiet daughter, the reliable one, until you disrupted their narrative." "But I didn't do anything wrong," I whispered. "That's the beauty of boundaries," she said. "You don't need permission to set them. You only need courage to enforce them." Her words stuck with me long after I left her office. 2 weeks out from the anniversary, I started receiving RSVP messages from strangers. My old email, the one tied to college job applications, had somehow been printed on a family newsletter. People I hadn't seen in a decade were writing, "Can't wait to see the new house," and "Thanks for hosting. Heard it's going to be beautiful." I couldn't believe it. They were still moving forward as if the party was happening in my home, despite my clear no. So, I made a decision. I hired a lawyer. It felt extreme, but something inside me needed to take this step, to draw a line in permanent ink. Her name was Marissa Hale, and she listened to me for 2 hours before drafting a formal cease and desist letter addressed to both my parents, warning of trespassing charges and defamation if they continued this false narrative or attempted to use my property without consent. I mailed it certified. I wanted them to sign for the shock. The day after they received it, I got a voicemail from Dad. It was short, cold. "You've made your point, Clara. Congratulations on turning your back on your family. Just don't come crawling back when you realize no one wants to celebrate life with you." It should have hurt. Years ago, it would have destroyed me. But now, it only confirmed one thing. I was finally free of their grip. The morning of their anniversary, I made a cup of coffee, sat on my porch swing, and watched the sun rise. I'd blocked their numbers, muted Lucas, and made plans to meet a few close friends for dinner that night, real friends, chosen family. But the universe wasn't done yet. At 11:47 a.m., I heard tires on gravel. A black car pulled into my driveway. Out stepped someone I hadn't seen in years, my Aunt Rachel. She looked around, taking in my modest home with a warm smile. "I got the newsletter," she said. "Figured it was a lie." I blinked, unsure what to say. "I also got your lawyer's letter forwarded by accident," she added, raising an envelope. "Alan forgot to update the mailing address. And I just wanted to tell you, I'm proud of you. You were always the brave one." The brave one. She handed me a small gift bag. Inside was a housewarming candle and a framed print that read, "Peace is earned, not gifted." I felt tears sting my eyes. For the first time in decades, someone from my family saw me, chose me, and maybe that was the beginning of a different story, a better one. But even then, I had no idea what was coming next, because that very evening, something would happen that would expose the truth about my parents to everyone, in the most public way possible, and they would never recover from it. Later that evening, I met my closest friends, Maya, Elise, and Jordan, at a cozy Italian bistro tucked away in the historic district. They had brought balloons, a tiny cake with a single candle, and a card that read, "To the fiercest homeowner we know, cheers to peace, power, and saying no." We toasted over wine, laughed about nothing and everything, and for the first time in weeks, I felt normal again, safe, seen. That's when Maya leaned in and said, "Clara, you might want to see this." She turned her phone toward me. On the screen was a Facebook Live video, posted by a distant cousin I barely remembered. It was titled, "Wilson Anniversary Party Turns into Absolute Disaster." I clicked play. The footage began shakily, filming a lavish banquet hall packed with guests and floral centerpieces. My mother stood by the head table in a floor-length silver gown, beaming into the crowd. My father, stiff and red-faced, tapped a glass for attention. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "As you know, we almost had the celebration at our daughter Clara's beautiful home. But," he gave a tight smile, Logistics didn't quite work out. I rolled my eyes. But then, just as he lifted a glass to begin the toast, a woman from the audience stood up, loudly. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cutting clear across the hall. "But that's not true." The camera jerked toward her. It was Aunt Rachel. "I think you all deserve to know," she continued calmly, "that Clara didn't change her mind. She was never asked. She was told. And when she refused to let her parents hijack her house for their party, she was screamed at, and her father threw a plate at her." Gasps filled the hall. Aunt Rachel wasn't finished. "She bought that home herself, paid every bill herself, built a life by herself, and instead of honoring that, they tried to punish her for having what they never controlled." My mother's mouth opened, but Aunt Rachel raised a hand. "I'm done watching Clara be erased at every gathering. You can drink your wine and pretend this didn't happen, but the truth has a way of arriving uninvited." The video ended mid-chaos with someone yelling, "Turn it off!" I sat there in stunned silence. "Clara," Elise whispered, "this thing has 9,000 views already, in 3 hours." Jordan checked his phone. It's been reposted on a couple Reddit subs. One of them is titled, "Parents Who Deserved to Be Cut Off." "You're going viral, girl." At first, I didn't know how to feel. Exposed? Empowered? Maybe both. But the deepest emotion simmering beneath the surface was relief. The story wasn't just mine anymore. The truth was out, and no longer being shaped by my parents' narrative. That night, my inbox exploded. Some messages were from family members apologizing. Others were from strangers, women mostly, sharing similar stories of boundaries violated and control masked as concern. One girl wrote, "Your aunt gave my mom the courage to confront my grandfather today. Thank you." Another read, "I was told I was selfish for buying a house before my brother. Reading your story helped me stand firm. You're not alone anymore." I cried reading those messages, not because of sadness, but because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the black sheep. I felt like the survivor. A week later, I received a certified letter from my father. It wasn't an apology, not even close. He accused me of embarrassing the family, blamed Aunt Rachel for stirring the pot, and warned me that no one forgets a daughter who humiliates her parents publicly. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent a copy to my lawyer and archived it. And then, I donated $500 to a domestic abuse legal hotline in his name. That felt oddly perfect. The fallout was slow, but steady. My parents were quietly uninvited from 2 future family reunions. The HOA president, Deborah, personally called to apologize for overstepping and admitted my father had tried to use my house again under the pretense of repair work. His behavior had raised red flags. Even Lucas reached out, this time genuinely shaken. "I didn't know," he said, voice small on the phone. "I thought you were exaggerating. I didn't realize how bad it really was." "I didn't need you to believe me then," I said gently. "But I do need you to respect the distance now." "I do," he said. "And if I ever come to visit, it'll be as your guest, not Dad's messenger." Small steps. 2 months later, Aunt Rachel and I hosted a small housewarming brunch together. Just a few close friends, her daughter, and Maya's little boy running barefoot through the hallway. We lit candles, played soft jazz, ate lemon scones on the back deck. No one screamed, no one threw anything. After everyone left, Aunt Rachel handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a gold pendant shaped like a key. "This was your grandmother's," she said. "She gave it to me when I moved out young, told me it was a symbol of opening your own doors." I held it tight in my palm. It was the first time a family heirloom had been given to me willingly. Not demanded, not manipulated, just offered. And it felt like the final piece of my freedom. Now, whenever people ask me why I don't speak to my parents anymore, I tell them this. Because the cost of keeping peace was burning down the home I built for myself, and I choose to keep it standing. And if anyone doesn't understand, that's fine. It was never their house to enter anyway. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.